So the question to me in this book was not like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, there's no place like home, or Thomas Wolfe, you can never go home again, but it's a question of, does home ever let you go? So that's kind of what she's thinking about as she's flying in. And the Charleston in the south is very beautiful, and so she's being pulled back in by the beauty of the place, and it sort of is seducing her in a very slow and subtle way. Eliza returned her gaze to the window. She's on the plane. Thousands of feet below, roads that curved and faded without apparent reason snaked through large green untouched forests. Unlike the ordered rectangles and quadrilaterals and polygons of the English countryside that fit together like irregular pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, everything here was sinuous, unordered, untamed. The only straight line she could see was the Southern Seaboard Railroad and the power lines that cut sharp tracks through large expanses of timber. Toward the coast, the solid forest gave way to winding rivers and irregular patches of marsh. Eliza guessed that the dark river that curled in lazy loops was the Ashley River. It reminded her of the white sugar icing her grandmother used to let her serpentine across the top of her lemon cakes. Eliza watched a plane shadow flee in front of them, across land that disappeared in marshes. She enjoyed the weightless feeling of the shadow's swift escape, precisely because running away from something or someone had never felt so easy. As they approached Charleston, the waterways grew wider, and the creeks and tributaries so numerous that it looked as if one big rainstorm would submerge the city. A local poet, long deceased, had referred to Charleston as a sea-drinking city. As they descended, Eliza could see all the houses lined up along the marshes, with long, thin docks running to the deep water. She watched a motorboat making a tight circle to pick up a water skier. The afternoon heat had not yet left the day when Eliza's flight arrived in Charleston. Eliza remained seated and reorganized her satchel while she waited for the other passengers to push past. She had told her mother not to send anyone. She would take a taxi. At the baggage claim, she looked at the people gathered around her, and she realized she could be in any city. Eliza wrestled her bag off the luggage carousel and headed for the taxi rank. She paused for a moment to look at the palmetto trees outlined against the sky. Almost another 3 hours of daylight left, but the descending sun had already begun to pull the color out of the sky. The air was soft and heavy. It was as if someone had put an arm around her. A battered yellow station wagon appeared, and a small black man hopped out. "Where are you going, young lady?" "Downtown, Church Street." They proceeded down the wide park-like retreat from the airport and then onto Interstate 26. Eliza was relieved that Jamie, that's her English boyfriend, had not come with her. She was tired, and she wanted to feel what it was like to come home, without having to translate or explain. Had Jamie come, he would not have been able to resist telling her that the roadway into Charleston was oversigned with billboards, tempting tourists with promises of perfect beaches. The Charlestonians' references to a colonnaded porch as a piazza was the equivalent of calling an Italian square, and that Charlestonians' pronunciation of the French street's name was not only incorrect, but incomprehensible. He would, in his mock serious tone, begin discussing, as he did on every trip they had taken, the addition of a new chapter to his imaginary work, A Guide to the Success. On the way into town, Eliza sat back and let herself be soothed by the constantly tires of the sections of concrete, past the acres of factories and worn-out land, until the tip of the Cook River Bridge appeared above the railing. Nothing had changed. The massive three-story Faber Ward House, built in the 1830s and converted into a hotel for freed slaves during the Civil War, still stood haunted and empty, facing land that, for as long as Eliza could remember, was used by the Port Authority for stacking containers of cargo ships. They continued on down East Bay Street, past the slave market, which catered to the tourist trade, and crossed Broad Street. Soon the buildings on the east side gave way to the seawall and promenade, and the name changed from East Bay to East Battery. There was something soothing about coming back to a place where there was nothing new to see, where everything was known, where there were only confirmations and never any questions. Eliza asked the driver to go all the way down East Battery past the towering antebellum houses, and then leave back around White Point Garden to Church Street. She wanted to take the long way home. She knew that once she left the taxi, her journey would no longer feel free and effortless, like the shadow of the plane she'd been watching. As they turned onto Church Street and bumped slowly over that uneven brick paving of the streets, Eliza said, "It's a pale stone-colored house on the left." The past was a kind of weather that pushed in from the harbor and lingered long. Eliza stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the tall three-story stucco house that had been in her father's family for 6 generations. So I'll stop there with Eliza looking up at her house and thinking about the past as a kind of weather. So thank you all very much. And